So we are recording this session. Again, the learning community is hosting today's session on community action and VISTA, a beautiful match. We are so glad that you're with us today. Thank you for wanting to learn more about a topic that is near and dear to both my and our other subject matter expert. Abby Hanks is on with us from the Commonwealth of Virginia Office of Volunteerism and Community Service. In addition to serving with the Virginia State Office, though, Abby has also been a very experienced VISTA and runs some really cool projects through the VISTA program in Virginia. So she's going to share her expert knowledge with us. If you will, please, we center our work at the partnership in the promise of community action. So if you would please take just a moment and read it with me while we launch today. Community action changes people's lives, embodies the spirit of hope, improves communities, and it makes America a better place to live. We care about the entire community, and we are dedicated to helping people help themselves and each other. That is really also the foundation of AmeriCorps VISTA, is helping help each other, helping people, helping communities. And the purpose, as many of you know, I see some learning community folks on, so a special hello to you if you're a member of one of this year's learning community groups, is to analyze community action outcomes and identify effective, promising, and innovative practice models that help to alleviate the causes and the conditions of poverty. AmeriCorps VISTA is dedicated to the same ideal and to working in the same communities that we care about to increase the capacity to address poverty. So there aren't too many programs that are better aligned with the learning community than VISTA. Have here a picture of our team at the learning communities, headed by Tiffany Marley, our own Director of Practice Transformation, and you see the rest of us here on the screen. We do post slides as well as the recording of the webinar, so you'll be able to get in contact with anyone with a simple click. Today's agenda, we're going to do a very brief history of VISTA, so you can kind of see where it sits in the world. Talk about AmeriCorps and the structure of VISTA and how that works. And then Abby is going to lead us through another section, the VISTA in Virginia, and how Virginia has done some really innovative things utilizing AmeriCorps VISTA volunteers. And obviously we'll have a special place for Q&A at the end, but we also want you to be able to ask questions as we go forward. And for that, we'd like you to use the chat box, which if you don't have it open on the right-hand side of your screen, if you click on the bottom of your screen or hover your mouse, you will see a little series of balloons pop up. There is one toward the right-hand side that has like a little speech window, like a little speech bubble. And if you click that, it will open your chat window, and you can type questions there. So here's your first question to get you used to it and to give us a sense of who's on the phone with us today and on the computers. Have you ever been an AmeriCorps VISTA member, or have you ever hosted an AmeriCorps VISTA member? If you would, just take a second and type your answer in the chat window. We're interested to see how much experience with VISTA we have on the webinar today. So in the beginning, this is hopefully going to launch a video. All right, Windows 2013 does not like that. So instead, we are going to share a different screen. Give me a moment. And I'm going to bring up this video in a different screen for you.
And this administration, today, here and now, declares unconditional war on poverty in America. Our aim is
Oh, well, to cure poverty, not just to relieve the symptoms. The link to this is in the presentation, and I'm sorry that my technical skills failed on that one. But we will send you a link to the video of Lyndon Johnson declaring that war on poverty. AmeriCorps VISTA came out of the same beginning that community action did. And It shares that same root of local solutions to poverty. So in 1964, obviously we had the Office of Economic Opportunity, and you see here some of the different programs that came out of that. Community Action, of course, VISTA. Many of you on the line have Head Start. Legal Aid was started at this point in time. Job Corps, there were more. Many of the programs we still run were born in this act. The mission of VISTA. We've got a few folks who had VISTA volunteers in Honolulu. Thank you, Michelle. They were wonderful. I will say that I have been both a VISTA supervisor and a VISTA trainer, although I've not actually been a VISTA. And I need to disclose full bias, which is that I am absolutely crazy about VISTAs and all the things they could do. We have a VISTA who was a VISTA volunteer who is on with us, and people who are hosting VISTAs currently. Awesome! Please do throw your questions in, throw your comments in and your observations. If something we say resonates with you, let us know. If we talk about something that hasn't worked for you, or you want to share a different experience, please share that too. The whole point of a learning community is to learn from each other. So the mission of VISTA, see if this sounds familiar to you. Building capacity in nonprofit organizations and communities to help bring individuals and communities out of poverty. So there are 4 core principles of AmeriCorps. You see them here on the screen. Poverty, of course, is the key focus. The whole point of VISTA is to end poverty by empowering communities. You should be very familiar to community action. By building capacity, and this is really important. We're going to talk more about this. A VISTA's job is not to do direct service or to replace staff. We have some very specific slides on this. A VISTA's job is to help build capacity and help create sustainable solutions. So who are VISTAs? Who can they be? They have to be at least 18 years old, but there is no upper age limit. Some folks think that seniors can only do senior corps. That's not the case. VISTA is volunteer in service to America, and there is no age restriction once they're a legal adult. They do have to be U.S. citizens or a legal permanent resident. Criminal background, check, which obviously most of us do anyway for our staff. They must meet knowledge, skill, and ability requirements that are set by the sponsoring organizations. And this is where it's really important, because some people say, oh, they have to have a college degree and they have to be able to do this. That's fine. Others say this knowledge or that knowledge or life experience is as or more important, and they don't set an educational requirement of a degree. It is up to the sponsoring organization to set those requirements. So it depends on your needs as an organization. VISTAs are typically full-time, and they make a 1-year commitment to serve. So who are they? What do they actually look like? These statistics are actually from I believe, 2011 to 13, but it's fairly similar now. These are the last published ones. Over 80% were women. 82% were born in 1982 or later. So obviously they do skew younger, though there's lots of exceptions with Gen Xers or Boomers or even traditionalists serving in that role. 93% are already experienced volunteers, and 68% have more than 2 years of volunteer experience. A large number, well over half, are locally recruited, so they don't always come from away. 38% do and move into a community for the 1 year, although I take credit for 2 Montana residents who were my VISTAs 12 years ago and are now working in state and local government in Montana, so they stayed. But VISTAs sometimes come from away and then go home afterward. They sometimes come and stay. So VISTAs can look very different depending on how that works. VISTA responsibilities. These are sort of the 5 keys, and this is the commitment. It's a 2-sided commitment if you decide to do this. We're going to get more into the nuts and bolts of how you do a project in a bit. But the VISTA's responsibility is first and foremost to engage in capacity building activities. So they are building the agency's capacity to grow after they're gone. Creating sustainable projects, things that go beyond their 1 year of service. Performing activities outlined, and I committed the error of leaving in an acronym, the VISTA assignment description. and that is written by the sponsoring organization and then shared with the VISTA and gets edited. Abby can jump in if you want to say anything about the VADs.
Something a little bit later about that. I have something a little later.
Okay, sounds good. You do need to supervise VISTAs weekly. These are folks coming into your agency from away. They're only there for a year. They are not staff in the sense of, although you could take them through staff orientation, but they are not agency staff. They are a VISTA assigned to your agency to do this work. So it is really important to support them and meet with them at least weekly. And support their efforts to gather data and information. Whether or not they're new to your community, they're going to be new to this role. And supporting them as they gather that information is critical to the success. So capacity building versus direct service. Let's spend just a little bit of time here thinking about this. And I'd like, if any of you have thoughts on this or ways that you've worked with this, I'd love for you to put them in the chat window. So capacity building refers to things that we do, tasks and activities, that expand our program or organization. You see here we talk about the scale, the reach, the efficiency, or the effectiveness of a program or an organization. So it can be program focused. Direct service, I think we all know, especially in community action, we all know what that is. That is the act of providing services to the recipients or clients of a program. That is not what a VISTA is typically supposed to do, and they definitely can't be doing it in an ongoing program. Abby, I think, is going to talk a little bit what happens when you launch a new program and they're helping to get it started. There is some gray area there in terms of they might be doing some client work at that point. But it's not direct service in the sense of providing services within a program. Abby, you want to, I'm going to pass you the ball if you like, so you can do it, and jump in and amplify there if you would.
Can you hear me?
I can now, yep.
Okay, great. So capacity building and direct service is one of the areas that the state office or, CNCS in general is very keen on, and making sure that your VISTA members are not providing that direct service work. And so when we have our agencies apply and, work with our VISTA members, we ensure that the capacity building is really where they are doing their focus on a day-to-day basis. So, there are a lot of different activities you can do within capacity building, such things as recruiting volunteers or designing databases for client tracking or creating templates and doing some event planning and applying for funding sources and grants. There's some really great activities that are not direct service, but that are helping your agency become more effective or efficient overall. And so that's something that, we always really harp on, and someone might turn in a sample VAD or VISTA assignment description, and it might have some direct service aspects to it, and we, work with the agency to rewrite that and turn that into capacity building away from direct service, because that is definitely the one area that is a violation of VISTA and from CNCS is that act of doing direct service. So it's a very important piece there. Mm-hmm. So, so moving on, so VISTA versus staff. So this is another area that the state office really looks into. VISTAs cannot replace the duties of an existing staff member. So there are times when an agency might say, we don't have the money to have this staff member anymore, we're going to have a VISTA come in to take their role. Well, that is an absolute no completely. So a VISTA supports the agency. A VISTA does not come in and take over and supplement a staff member's role. So a VISTA should come in and create something that is sustainable, so once they leave, when their term is over, if there is not a VISTA coming in for a second year, that project should still be able to continue year to year after they're gone, because they've created a sustainable product that they have left with. So don't think that they can just, you eliminate a position and someone can come in to take that over. That is definitely something that's not allowable. The other piece is VISTAs cannot conduct administrative support duties. So your VISTA should not be coming in to answer the phones every day and open the mail and order the supplies. they really are there to help your agency grow, help your agency expand, to become more effective and more efficient overall, not doing those day-to-day admin support activities. And then another big thing is, and this is more of an education piece too with staff members at your agency, is that VISTAs are not interns. A lot of times we have VISTAs that serve in our office, and that's one of the biggest things at the beginning that we train all of our staff on, that this is a VISTA member coming in, this is not an intern earning credit for their class. So that's different roles that they play, it's different expectations from a VISTA member versus an intern, so that's just an overall concern there, is just using that.
Yeah, I agree. And just as we move on to the next one, the distinction is really important. VISTAs earn a stipend for their work, which we're going to talk about here in a second, but they're there to build our capacity. In theory, we're there to build an intern's capacity, right? That is not to say that some VISTA members don't come in with very little real-world experience, and their capacity is getting built by leaps and bounds. But it is not the same as an intern who gets credit. And the duties of an intern typically overlap with some of that admin stuff because sort of the price they pay for getting that credit is that they help out with other things while they're learning. That's not the same for a VISTA. And I'm sorry that people are all, I'm going to mute down, Abby. I've got some sirens in the vicinity.
All right, so a VISTA leader, this is a person who has already served for 1 year as a VISTA, and if your project has 6 or more VISTA members, you are eligible to have a leader support the members. So a leader would work alongside a project manager or a program manager for a VISTA program and really provide one-on-one support to all of your VISTA members. We're going to talk about my project, but we just recently had a VISTA member whose term ended, and she did so much great work for us, really providing, she had one-on-one check-in calls with every single member to make sure their projects were going successfully, and it's a really great asset if you have a large VISTA program to be able to have somebody else who has served in that role, who understands what VISTA is, and can provide that support. Also, leaders help with data collection, so the VISTAs all have to submit reports, so they look at that data, find out if there's anything that the VISTAs might need assistance on, and to make their outcomes, to have better outcomes. And they also coordinate and facilitate trainings and for all of the VISTA members. So I know that our VISTA leader coordinated an in-person training. We have VISTAs all across the state of Virginia, so she did an in-person one where everyone came together, and she helped get all the trainers for that. So really a VISTA leader is a great asset for a program if you have a large program. I really advocate if you have a large program to go that route. So some benefits, as Will said, VISTA members receive a living allowance. So a living allowance ranges depending on where you are in the country. So most of Virginia is around $12,500 a year is the living allowance. I know that Northern Virginia around D.C. area is slightly higher because the cost of living is higher. But that ranges across the country. It is still low. It is at the poverty level of the area that they're serving. So this is not a full-time, job that somebody is making bukus of money doing. This is, a VISTA member is giving a year to do service in their community, essentially. They're just getting a small living allowance. One great asset of VISTA is that education award. So at the end, once you've completed your full year of service, you're eligible for either an education award or a stipend. The education award is about $6,000, the equivalent of the Pell Grant, and that can be used to either pay student loans that somebody has or to pay for further education. And if that's not needed, VISTA does offer a stipend instead. It is significantly less. It's about $1,600, but that can be used to pay for anything. It's just like an end of service award for finishing your service. VISTA also has lots of professional development opportunities. They know that since you're giving kind of a year of your life to do service, they want to provide you with professional development. So there's in-service training that you're sent to. There's also a host of webinars for VISTA members. there is an opportunity. Vistas can apply to take some coursework through AmeriCorps VISTA and actually earn some credit. So that's something that Vistas can apply for if they're interested. And then VISTA does offer other types of benefits. They have a health care allowance. It's not health insurance, but a health care allowance. There's child care benefits. I know that I have 2 VISTAs that rely on that child care benefit because they have children that are in daycare, and that subsidy really helps them allow them to keep doing their service. Housing assistance is optional. I think there might be a slide on housing in a minute. And then there's mileage reimbursement for service-related travel. So there are other benefits, but these are some of the main benefits that are talked about on the VISTA website, that you can learn more about each of these there. All right, so project and member management. So the site supervisors, every site has to have a supervisor for their VISTA members. So, and a site supervisor is a really important position. I'm not going to underscore that at all. These VISTAs, a lot of times, this might be their first professional experience. As Will said, you might also have a VISTA who is retired and just looking for something to do. You know, we've had that case before as well. But especially for those this is their first professional experience, it's very important to serve as a coach and a mentor during that year. And the other thing to keep in mind is that a VISTA, they're only there for 1 year in your agency. So you really want to take the time to have them learn about your programs, learn about the role that they're doing, and really create a sustainable plan that can be used once they're gone. So I know, Lil, you were a VISTA supervisor. Did you want to talk about your experience?
Sure, I have. And David Barnes, I know you're on. We can't unmute you because it's a webinar, which means the audio is one way. But if you want to type anything about being a VISTA supervisor or any observations you have, I would invite you to do so. And I know we've got Michelle from Hawaii who had 2 VISTAs, so please, the same invitation applies. I think the key is to be open and welcoming and accessible. The last one is the hard one. It's easy to be open. It's easy to be welcoming. VISTAs are amazing. I mean, they come in with this boundless energy and this willingness to make change, and the only thing that will stop them is if you don't support them. Truly, I've seen and watched VISTAs overcome huge barriers in the community, create awesome new programming, all sorts of cool stuff. But I've also seen VISTAs who weren't supported by a supervisor, often in a small agency where they thought, oh, we'll build capacity, and they just didn't know where to go. So especially at the beginning, you have to invest the time to get your VISTA started on the right track. Those weekly meetings are critical throughout the year, but I would encourage, even if it's not you, as a supervisor, have your VISTA meeting with somebody in your organization, each day for the first few weeks, even if it's just a little slice of orientation time. I really found that structuring that welcome, making them feel supported and surrounded, was really important. Abby, that's kind of the one nugget that I wanted to share. I'll share a couple of comments that are coming in and then turn it back to you. David suggesting when recruiting out of area VISTAs, you have to assist in housing, and I think we're going to come back to housing, and local information prior to them starting. Absolutely, David, because they don't know we were coming. They can look it up. They can Google it, right? There's plenty of information out there, but there isn't always a lot of local knowledge, and that's tough. Okay, Sarah, who was a VISTA, who's on with us, she went from Appalachian, Kentucky to the inner city. I'll bet that was culture shock. We have VISTAs who do the opposite. I actually live in Southwest Virginia, and I work down here, so I am deep in Appalachian coal country. So, yeah, it's a whole different ball of wax. So I agree with both of those, that giving them information on the area, what they'll be doing, but also just the culture of the area, in addition to housing, which is key because that is a big barrier for some VISTAs. Abby, go ahead while I check for other chats or Q&As.
Okay, great. So, and I think VISTA a while ago did a kind of a study on when do most VISTAs early terminate. So if a VISTA were to early terminate, when is that? And I think they've discovered that's between months 3 and 5. So between, your first few months, you're kind of still getting into it. You're like, oh, I can make it. Well, between month 3 and 5, you're kind of plateauing, and you're like, what am I doing here? I've moved to this new town. I still don't have connections. So it's really imperative for that site supervisor to provide those connections in the community and, to make sure that, especially during those months, that the VISTA is understanding their role and is actually making progress on some of their activities outlined in that assignment description that they have. So the site supervisor role is a very important one, and you really do have to have time to dedicate to being a site supervisor for a VISTA. So a few more expectations. So as a site supervisor, you need to provide onboarding and orientation. There will need to be some administrative support. So your VISTA does need an office space, a cubicle, supplies, equipment, that supervision we talked about. Attendance is a big policy. VISTAs do have to complete timesheets, and those are either submitted to an intermediary or submitted straight to CNCS, depending on the model that you're using. So just keeping track, making sure that they are doing their 40 hours a week or not going over the amount of leave that they have is important. The service-related transportation, so anything that they're going to, if a VISTA is going to a meeting or going to a training, your agency and you are responsible for either providing the transportation or for providing reimbursement for any of that transportation. The sponsor verification form goes along with the attendance. So if your VISTA was not working, early terminated, you can't find your VISTA, you have to kind of report that via verification form every 2 weeks. An emergency funds advance, so that's just something that your agency, if you have a VISTA, just know that if for some reason something happens, you are eligible or able to kind of advance or loan some money to your VISTA, but you would want to have some parameters around that if that's something that's needed. And then the other big piece as a site supervisor, you're really expected to acknowledge the VISTA program in your community. So make sure you have posters up saying you have a VISTA serving. Make sure your funders and your partners and supporters know what CNCS is and what AmeriCorps is all about and what VISTA is about, and really just letting people know that a VISTA is serving at your agency and what they're doing at your agency.
I agree. Let me tail onto that one because I think there's a couple of things. And again, if people who have VISTAs, Sarah who's been a VISTA, have things to add, again, please chat up while I'm saying this next. Having your VISTAs, we've actually, VISTA gives them like a couple of shirts or a shirt, Abby. I'm not sure if it's the same everywhere. But you can actually you can give your VISTAs clothing. You can actually give them gift cards. You can't give them money, but you can give them other stuff, which we will talk about. But we bought extra shirts at different places so that they could literally wear proudly their AmeriCorps VISTA shirt, identifying them as a volunteer. And one of the things I did that I found worked well was on their business cards. Not only was it the agency card with their name and AmeriCorps VISTA member, but we also put on the VISTA logo on it to really emphasize that it was a dual, they were an AmeriCorps member placed at our agency. So that really helped them identify, and it also gave them a great sense of pride. For all of our younger VISTAs, it was their first business card too, so that was always exciting. But you can help with that. So I don't see any other chats coming in, but I just wanted to share that. Abby, go ahead.
So a few prohibited activities. A VISTA, like we talked about earlier, cannot replace the duties of an existing staff member. Also, VISTAs are not allowed to perform any political or religious advocacy. So educating a legislative group, that is okay, but actually going and advocating on the Hill or going to your local state capitol, that is not allowed. And then also, a VISTA cannot manage or apply for any other CNCS grants or sub-grants. So you can't have an AmeriCorps VISTA member writing a grant for a senior corps program or something similar to that. So those are the main prohibited activities. There's a really great hotline, this national service hotline that Lil has on this slide. That is a great phone number to call if there's any questions about what a VISTA can and cannot do. Also, the VISTA campus, I think there was link for that and a few slides ago. That is also a really great resource for what a VISTA can and cannot do when if you're thinking about starting a VISTA program in your area. You can look there and find out more about all the prohibited activities. But those are the three big ones. So helping your VISTA. So as a VISTA sponsor, you can support your VISTA member in multiple ways. So Lil touched a little bit about this on the, providing some clothing with your agency logo on it. And as a VISTA, you can provide like a housing stipend, or if your agency has housing units, you can have a housing unit for your VISTA members. So that is something that you can provide VISTA members. You also can provide food and gifts throughout the year. You can't provide direct money to your VISTA. So you can't just be paying them extra than their stipend, but you can provide like gas gift cards throughout the year, or, taking them to lunch, taking them to dinner. I was just at a VISTA training, and a VISTA program has an agency that has a cafeteria within the agency, so they provide their VISTAs that work there breakfast and lunch every day because they have a cafeteria right there within their building. So that's an option. I know that's not an option for a lot of small nonprofits, but that's something out there. And then one other piece of ongoing training, that's a big one. We always suggest our agencies provide the VISTAs with training throughout the year, so we actually have them budget out some money to have VISTAs go to conferences or trainings that will help them both in their role, but then also personally to grow professionally. So, Lil, do you have anything else to add here?
No, I think you've covered it. Well, I would say no, you've covered it, and then I think of the one thing. Yeah, never let your VISTA pay for lunch if you're out there together. And one of the things, because our agencies typically are great about covering employee travel and per diem, make sure your VISTA gets in advance if you're sending them to a larger conference or to a city with a group. So because they often don't have the resources to front money to get reimbursed. So when we would send our VISTAs, particularly out of town, of course, off for 3 or 4 days, we make a point of giving them a travel advance, which was often offered to agency folks across our network as well. Most agencies do. But make sure you do that for your AmeriCorps. Keep it easy for them to maintain their cash flow.
So housing was brought up by, I think it was David, and so if VISTAs are not in your community and they're moving to your community, you want to just make sure you understand what their housing status is. You want to make sure that they know the safe areas in your community. You can Google all you want, but really, unless you live there, you don't know what street or what community is the best area to live in or that's affordable for a VISTA member to look for housing. A big one is asking board and staff and community for housing ideas. If you have board members that have connections in the community, or you have staff members that might have connections, ask them for those connections and help find housing for these VISTAs, because they're moving. We have some that are moving, across the country and to a brand new area. So you want to give them as much options as possible. Also, temporary housing, if there's some transition time, you might have a short window from when you hire to when the person starts. So if there's a short little window, how are they expected to find housing? And they're not going to be in the right state of mind to complete their project if, the first month all they're doing is searching for housing options. So if you can find some temporary options that they can be in and some options for them to live, that will allow that time for settling in, and it'll allow the transition to be a little bit easier.
That it will. I heard one, I don't think it was necessarily novel, I just hadn't seen it before, from some colleagues back in Montana. They started pairing up some of the VISTAs with seniors in the community who had extra bedrooms and who were willing to host somebody in kind of like almost an Airbnb setting. But basically, instead of, renting housing, they rented a room from a senior who needed the income. It was just a lovely match, and I thought I would reflect on that.
All right, and so this is a screenshot of that VISTA campus. So this is a really great tool if you have current members, if you're looking to get a program. this is where you go. There is so much good information on here. You do not have to have an account. You can create one, but you do not have to have an account. There's a lot of information about supervision requirements, what a VISTA leader is, members. There's webinars on here you can watch. There's some really great information on this site, and I would recommend, if you at all are interested in getting a VISTA member, to check this site out. So I think next we're going to transition into the program here in Virginia. So I am the program consultant with the state CSBG office, and I work with a colleague, well, two colleagues really, and we oversee all the 31 agencies here in Virginia. And my role, I actually started as a VISTA member about 5 or 6 years ago, and I was hired on here full-time after my term ended, and I've been with the state office ever since. And like I said, I was a VISTA member, and I was working at DSS as a VISTA member. That's where our state CSBG office is located, in the Department of Social Services. And I really thought VISTA was a great opportunity, and I thought that community action agencies could really benefit from VISTA. As Will talked about, they really go hand in hand. They were started at the same time. So we decided to kind of take the leap for our office, the CSBG office, to become an intermediary. And an intermediary, we are really the one who works directly with CNCS, which is the Corporation for National and Community Service. We write the grant for the VISTAs. We're responsible for all of the reporting. We also are responsible for keeping track of the members, recruiting the members, and that whole piece. And we have sub-sites, which are the community action agencies. So our program started in 2016 with 4 members at 4 community action agencies in Virginia, and we have grown a lot in the past 3 years. This is due in part to agencies seeking VISTA members, more agencies seeking members, and also by CNCS actually asked our program to take on more members because they really liked what our members are doing across the state. So currently we have 10 VISTAs in service, and we have 7 open VISTA slots. And so there is a little overlap there. We have a few members ending in the fall and some of those 7 starting in the fall. But we have a total of really 12 VISTA slots across the state of Virginia right now. And 15 of our 31 community action agencies have either had a VISTA or are currently recruiting a VISTA member. And then we actually have 3 agencies in Virginia that are in their 3rd year with a VISTA member. So we do allow our agencies to apply for multiple years as long as they have compelling projects for the VISTAs to work on. So our program, the structure of our program, so we allow our agencies to choose the focus area and the objective area of their project. We have an application that the agencies complete annually, and they have to discuss what their need is for the member. They have to talk about the objectives for their projects, and must also explain how the agency will supervise the member, because as we talked about, supervision is a really key piece of keeping the VISTAs successful. And so as part of the application, the agency also submits a work plan which shows that they have thought out the entire year of the project. So many of our agencies in the past for their projects have focused on VISTA members doing comprehensive community needs assessment work. A lot have been working on marketing and fund development, and then volunteer recruitment and management. So those have been our main focus areas, but we've had other projects between all of those. We've had everything from agencies doing like a recidivism study. We've had like needs assessments of programmatic needs assessments, and then also agency-wide needs assessments. So there's been a lot of cool work out there that our VISTAs have been doing. But once we have the VISTA project selected, we actually, sorry, on to another thing here. So this opioid and addiction is also another special project that we work on. So CNCS actually had a priority to have VISTAs work on opioid and addiction specific projects last year, and we were awarded 4 VISTA slots to specifically focus on those opioid work. So we have 2 VISTAs that are at agencies out in the state, so one on the eastern side of the state in Hampton Roads, and then one in far southwest Virginia. And then we have 2 VISTAs who are working statewide on opioid and addiction projects. So You know, you might have special things in your community that are really hitting your community hard that you can put a VISTA into, working directly on that. So we have a wide range of programs in Virginia that our VISTAs are working on. So a few of our highlights here that we've had in Virginia. We've had some really great success. One is really the community action and agencies' understanding of VISTA and national service programs. I think before we started our VISTA program, there wasn't as much known about VISTA within community action. So over the past few years, we've done a lot of education on how VISTA and national service can really impact community action agencies. You know, they both were started to eliminate poverty, promoting self-sufficiency. So this has really allowed for community action to really understand what VISTA is and how to use it within their community. Also, it's really been great for VISTAs to understand community action. So almost all of our VISTAs had no idea what community action was before they started as a VISTA member. And now we actually have had 6 of our VISTA members hired on full-time at their agencies after their term ended. So, you know, these people are coming in not knowing anything about community action and then becoming invested in it, which is, I think, a really great highlight for the VISTA program in general. And then, of course, the results for the agencies. So this is some of our results from 2016 to 2018. We don't have the 2019 numbers yet, but some of our main results is the community volunteers recruited. We had 533 community volunteers recruited by our VISTA members. We've had 2,025 service hours performed by those volunteers who were recruited by our VISTA members. There's $32,000 of cash resources that were leveraged during that 2-year period. Also, $290,000 value of in-kind resources leveraged during the reporting period, and actually one of those is a VISTA secured $240,000 in mental health services for her community. So, I mean, that's just huge right there. So, also, you know, there's been so many marketing and development plans that have been created. I mentioned the recidivism study for our statewide reentry program. We had a VISTA that did 23 listening sessions across Virginia to understand the opioid crisis and develop community resources and responses. So there's been some really great work from our VISTAs over the past couple of years, and I would say that all of our VISTAs have had really great experiences. You know, you every once in a while get the ones who will early terminate. It's going to happen all over. It's not just, you know, don't think sadly if you have a project and someone leaves early. That's not, you know, it happens. It's kind of like the name of the game. But you have to think bigger picture and think about all of the results from the other VISTAs that are still serving and that are currently serving. So we've had some really great years, and we're looking at keeping the program going. I don't think we have any we're not planning to stop unless there is no agency need. So I think that's kind of our thought, is we're going to kind of keep it going as long as the agencies see that VISTA is beneficial for them.
Well, and speaking as a Virginia CAP person before I went back to the national office, I don't think you're going to see that anytime soon. Because, and I think more and more agencies are discovering the magic that a VISTA can wreak on with your agency. We did have a question come in from Sarah. Abby, could you talk just a little bit more about the kinds of projects that the opioid-focused VISTAs are working on? Just a little bit of drill down into the types of projects.
Yes. So the 2 that are working on the statewide, they are the ones that are doing these. So the listening sessions were last year, and from those listening sessions, they developed a list of 83 action items. So these are trainings that are needed out in the community. They created a multi-page report of resources across the state on what is out there when so what they found is that when, you know, a client comes into like a local Department of Social Services and might have an opioid issue or an addiction issue, the caseworker wasn't knowing where to send them. So they have developed, you know, a list of resources of where can somebody go if if they have an addiction issue. And then they've also developed this action item list, and they're holding regional trainings on many different concepts. So, you know, everything from for child care workers, like how do you care for a child who was a substance abuse infant? And so they're putting these trainings on across the state. So the VISTAs are actually developing the trainings, pulling together the trainers, and you know, helping to get that out across the state. We also had a VISTA who was in the Hampton Roads area, who became certified in like the naloxone training, and she secured naloxone kits for nonprofits in her community, and she was developing trainings, like train the trainer type of programs for VISTAs to go out and do, not for VISTAs, but that VISTA did train the trainer program to develop trainers to go out and do some naloxone training in their community. So that was some of the big ones. Like the one that, the mental health services, she's in the Appalachian area, and you know, she was, I think, mainly doing like some grant writing and some work out there. I know Lil actually might have a little bit more insight to that project since she worked with that VISTA for a little while. Did you have anything you want to add about her project?
Yeah, I think one of those things that she helped with that you mentioned on the statewide level was local resources don't always know each other. Believe it or not, X church's food pantry doesn't always know about Y church's food pantry. All the things that can keep somebody, it matters for opioid use, because if there aren't the community supports, we all know in our communities, if folks who are seeking treatment can't get transportation to treatment, get treatment paid for, have their kids helped, have enough food to make it through, you know, they're not going to succeed in their recovery. So part of what she did was help create that resource guide for the 3 counties that was really in depth. Another piece of it was bringing a play about opioids to the region and helping assure that. And another piece of it for her was, again, a number of churches had recovery groups. There were a number of Narcotics Anonymous groups. There were a couple of just independent things going on, anti-addiction, and not all of them knew about each other. So Crystal started attending all those meetings. Her travel allowance was pretty amazing for mileage, although there was an agency car sometimes. But simply having a presence at all those meetings, that agency, my old agency, full disclosure, was too small to send a staff member to all of these different meetings every month, and yet the challenge was people in these meetings didn't all know about each other. So having Crystal be the thread that connected them really led to some efficiencies in the region and to better local knowledge. So I think that was really important.
And I think that's an overall goal of VISTA, it's just to make those connections. I think we noticed that a lot. You know, you have so many nonprofits in an area and none of them are working together, so that VISTA can help bridge the gap, whether it be an opioid-specific project or just a partnership development project. I know we have an agency that's working to develop more partnerships, and they have a VISTA meeting in the community and pulling together partners to some collaborative meetings. So, I mean, that's a really great role for a VISTA to do, and it's definitely a capacity building role as well. And one thing that I didn't mention earlier, but our sites, there is a cost to have a VISTA member. So it is usually pretty minimal. It's between $5,000 and $6,000 for the year. And how we do that is we don't take any administrative cost off of the payment. So they are just strictly paying for a cost share. So with VISTA, our office we have to actually pay for some of our VISTA members. So if you get a VISTA program, you typically, have a few members that might be at no cost to your agency, but then you have some members that you do have to pay for, and it's all just a ratio that's developed by CNCS. It's developed by them, and they can kind of tell you what they can offer you. So what we do is after the application process and we've selected the program, we determine how many slots we have to pay for and how many VISTAs we're going to have, and we do, that math to figure out the actual cost for each VISTA member. So we're able to keep it pretty low. I mean, if you think about it, about $5,000 to $6,000 for somebody to serve full-time for 1 full year with your agency, we think that's a pretty good deal. So we're we're very lucky to be in that position, and we do not, like I said, we do not charge any administrative costs for the VISTA program. If you're looking at being an intermediary, you might want to think about that if you think you're going to have to hire on a staff member to oversee the program or a part-time staff member to oversee the program. You may need to add on some overhead costs there, which I know intermediaries do. A lot of them do, but we've been lucky enough that we have not had to do that for our program. And with highlights, with any program, there's always challenges, so I just want to touch on a few things that we've noticed over the past couple of years as challenges. So one of those is recruitment. So finding the right candidates has been increasingly harder and harder throughout the years, and I think part of that is because jobs are more readily available. So, we have some great people apply, and by the time that they're selected and can start as a VISTA, they've already found a full-time employment somewhere else. So, to find the right candidate, it can take time. I know that CNCS recently put out an RFP to do some more college campus recruitment. So we're hoping that drives more college graduates to apply that maybe want to take a gap year between undergrad and grad school. Not that you have to have an undergrad degree by any means, but they're thinking that since that's the age range that usually applies, having some recruiters on campus will help that. So recruitment it's a challenge. It's a challenge across the country. You really need to look locally and try to find some good candidates in your community if you're looking at going through with the VISTA program. Also, the administrative burden. I'm not going to lie, it's not the easiest thing to run at the state level. We have to do the reporting. We have to do a continuation application every year. We have to do the timesheet verification form every 2 weeks. There's also recruitment, which it takes time. You have to screen applicants, and you have to send them to sites to interview. So there is a lot of work that goes into the VISTA program in general. So you just want to keep that in mind if you're thinking about taking on the role of becoming an intermediary or becoming just a VISTA site in general. Just taking that into consideration. Just know that there is a lot that comes with it. It does take time. It's not something that you can say is an hour a week by any means. It does take time to get that in. Also, supervision. So all agencies must provide a site supervisor. We talked about site supervisors earlier, but that is time consuming as well. So you need to provide a lot of support to your members. You have to ensure their projects are sustainable at the end of the year. So really just take that into consideration too, is do you have the time to supervise another person at your agency? So those are some of the big challenges we've had. I mean, we've been really lucky. We've had some really great VISTAs. We've had some great site supervisors. There are challenges along the way, but I think it's all been worth it throughout our years that we've had the program. Do you have anything to add?
Abby, thank you so much. If folks have any other questions, please put them in the chat window. I would sum up as somebody who's been sort of on, relatively speaking, on both sides of the VISTA coin in the sense of a local agency, but working with a state and working with intermediaries. If you're just starting your VISTA journey, do find an intermediary in your state. It might or might not be a state office. It might very well be another nonprofit. Montana, for a long time, it was Montana Legal Aid was actually the statewide, had chosen to be a statewide and basically grant VISTA positions to agencies. So depending on where you are, if you don't know how to find a project, contact me. I will help you locate projects in your state that you could work with to get a VISTA member. Becoming an intermediary is a huge step. As Abby says, there's a lot that goes along with it. It is not for the faint of heart, and you definitely want to have run VISTAs for a year or two before you consider taking on that additional cost and burden. So I think that's the point I really want to drive home. But on balance, and then we will just go to a few reminder slides about upcoming activities. But on balance, having VISTA members is an amazing experience for an agency. They bring an energy and an enthusiasm, a fresh perspective, a true belief in making a difference that can not only inspire, but it can reinvigorate everyone. And I speak personally on that, as well as having seen it with staff. It's just, they really are magic. And they create amazing change if you create the space for them to do that. So I'm a huge fan of the program. I've had nothing but wonderful vistas, including some who, as Abby said, early terminated. Somebody had a death in the family. It turned out it just wasn't the right placement for somebody else. That's okay. You can refill the position. You can, in many cases, push it into the next year. You can do a number of things. Just because a VISTA doesn't work out doesn't mean VISTA doesn't work out. So things happen. So I encourage you to get with us with questions. I'm sure Abby would also be willing to serve as a resource, but we can hook you into CNCS, the Corporation for National and Community Service, and find a way to have you figure out how VISTA could work in your agency. So last webinar before our annual convention at the end of the month is next week. I will be back with Lindsay Marsh looking at Census 2020 on and how agencies can be involved and why you need to be involved, because the census numbers that create everything from CSBG and LIHEAP and different allocations to voting districts all depend on census data. So making sure your whole community is counted is really important. So same bat time, same bat channel, for those of you who remember Batman from the 70s. But we will be doing a 1-hour webinar on Census 2020 and why and how you can be involved. Most of you know we do training and technical assistance, but we can do it in a number of areas. I'm just going to go through these. We do have the online Community Action Academy called Moodle. It's on the Moodle platform. We have a lot of on-demand courses that are free to you all. So when you look at the slides, this live link will take you there, and you can access courses that are growing each month. We'll be putting a census course up in the next 2 weeks. So Abby is chatting in the chat window with folks who have questions. Please post them there. You can, as with webinars, you can do Moodle from your phone. Some of you, I hope, are joining us in Chicago for the annual convention celebrating 55 years of community action. I will be there. If you want to chat about VISTA, just find me, and there are going to be folks there from various CNCS projects as well as agencies, so we can hook you up. And then we are having our winter management leadership training conference. We're going to go visit and support our colleagues in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and January 8th through 10th. So registration will be opening soon. Save the dates. And then there are some session offerings that I put in here just so you could see them of what's going on at the convention in regard specifically to the learning communities. There's plenaries, there's breakout sessions on everything from othering and belonging with John Powell, which is going to be an extraordinary session, to reducing child poverty and looking at poverty, equity, and migration issues. But then we're also going to have deep dive on the 2-gen model and racial equity, both. We'll be looking about the transformation in learning community practices and about trauma-informed care. There is, unfortunately, it is already fully booked with a waiting list. There is a racial healing circle. We are looking to do more of those. And really, as always, thank you for taking time out to stick with us for an hour of your day. While grant funds are not easy to get, we do know that the most precious resource you have is time. So thank you for sharing yours with us today. Again, we will be posting the webinar and the slides, and invite absolutely to get in touch with any of us with questions. You see my email there in the middle, ldupree@communityactionpartnership.com. And we will follow up by sending you some materials, but they will be posted on the website as well. Have a great rest of your week. Abby, thank you so much for being our subject matter expert on VISTA. I was privileged to work with Abby running a VISTA member project in an agency, and it was one of the best experiences I've ever had with VISTA. So if you're lucky enough to be in Virginia, you've got it made.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much, and we will see you next time.